This short film has been created to help you understand the different processes involved in assessing a historic vessel. It should be watched alongside Units 1 and 3 of the Historic Vessel Conservation Qualification. It covers understanding a vessel's significance using off-ship research and fabric research, the different sources of information which may be available, vessel components and the material a vessel was built from, and evidence of prior work. It ends with some examples of how to present all this in a written summary. Along the way, we'll show a number of case studies of different vessels. By the end of this film, you should have a better understanding of how to assess a vessel for its historical significance, how to assess the condition of the vessel, the range of sources which may be available, and how to present your findings in a written summary. When people first see a historic vessel, they may have many reactions. Some fall in love straight away. Others wonder what all the fuss is about. In order to decide whether a craft is worth conserving, it's important to fully understand her significance both in terms of her fabric and her historical associations. The vessel itself will provide many answers, but you will also need to do some off-ship research. Consider yourself a detective, looking for any clues about the vessel's past, her construction, her role, what happened to her, and the people she was involved with. It's important to investigate thoroughly and keep an open mind on conservation options at this stage, until a greater understanding develops. A good place to start when assessing the vessel is to write down all the ways you know her to be important. Historic vessels are complex objects that vary enormously in scale and type. Begin by thinking about how old the vessel is, whether she has any interesting design innovations or features, what historical associations she has with significant people, places and events, how much original fabric survives and any key features, what condition she is in, how rare or unusual the vessel is. Whether a great warship or a working boat, it's important to engage with the full story of the vessel, from the context in which she was first built, right up to her present condition. Much about a vessel's history can be told simply through her fabric. Records kept on a vessel can sometimes be limited, or have gaps or embellishments that throw up more questions. A careful examination of the fabric should establish the particulars of the vessel's initial design, materials, construction, propulsion, arrangement, and details of her finish, along with any changes that may have been made to her.
Cyclops, we believe, was built in 1916. So the first step is to obviously remove anything that is clearly not original, and to establish that whatever is left is doing either something of value or replacing timber that should have been there. In Cyclops' case, there is a large steel frame inside which was a support for her engine. We've left that in because at the moment it's supporting the boat itself and holding the two sides together. Having established that the timber is either original or replacing original material like for like, we are then only replacing the timber that needs replacement. So in a yacht restoration you might replace, for the sake of aesthetic, a lot of timber that's no longer attractive. In the case of Cyclops, we're leaving it well alone and only replacing it if it's decayed to the point where it's causing either further damage to the boat or no use. Every step of the restoration has been heavily photographed. Because we work with a large party of volunteers, they like to be kept in the loop with the restoration. So on a monthly basis, the leading volunteer, Mr. Fred Atwood, does a newsletter for the other volunteers illustrating exactly what's been done. We have a strong culture at the Property Trust of making records of the boats as we work with them, not least of which because we know that we often start with original material that can't be saved. So records are kept. Where possible, we will compare with the boat that we've got with any available drawings. It's quite difficult in the case of ships' boats to find drawings of the individual vessel, but we do have drafts from an earlier era of this type of vessel, and we can compare her existing construction with that she was designed to be built with.
As well as gaining an understanding of historical significance from the vessel's fabric, it is also important to conduct off-ship research. either to verify something you have found on a vessel, such as the original rowing positions on Cyclops, or to bring to light history that cannot be gleaned from the ship's fabric. There are many sources of information available for research into the history of a vessel. It can be one of the most exciting and rewarding parts of the process, as you can find out something you were really not expecting about the vessel's past that changes your entire approach to the conservation process. Key questions to think about when conducting off-ship research are: who designed her, built her, when, where, and for what purpose? What are her construction materials and fastenings? What is her sequence of owners and users? How was she used? What was the impact of changing use on her fabric? And does she have a history of associations with specific groups of people?
Here we have a complete deck plan layout of HMS Warrior as it was in 1862. We know it was drawn by a midshipman, Henry Murray, who was about 16 years of age at the time. The ship was in an alterations period, so very little watches and jobs for the midshipmen to do, so they were tasked with tasks of this nature to put into their journals, and Midshipman Murray has been able to record that there's 45 tons of fresh water stowed over the forward magazine, who was in each of the cabins, and what was stored in each of the storerooms. Whereas the original builder's drawing just said storeroom, storeroom, office, office, ditto, ditto. We've actually got the genuine fact.
Joined Monitor 33 at Pembroke today. Tried to find out what 33 was like, but nobody on shore had seen any of her class. We were told she was a small monitor, called by the workmen, or whippet. In 2015, HMS M33 was unveiled after undergoing a £2.4 million restoration, allowing the public on board. At the time, she was the only warship from World War I open to visitors. When restoring this M29 class monitor, the stories of her crew were central to understanding the ship and her history.
The First World War is full of big stories, big numbers, big casualties. M33 was part of that, but in a very personal way. And thanks to the crew, this cutout here represents, it's taken from a photograph of the actual crew at Gallipoli. The crew's diaries, the crew's journals actually speak to us over 100 years. This is a historic piece of steel, it's a historic ship, that she's a rare ship, she's a rare survivor. But also I think it's the personal stories. It's the fact that 72 men, sailors, lived, worked, went to war on this ship, came back, and we have their stories to tell.
The design and construction of Shield Hall is a story all of its own. She is one of the last steamships to be built, and today one of the largest still afloat and operating. Her classic layout, wheelhouse, high bow, cruiser stern, combines with a mixture of old and new to create a long, elegant hull form with both riveted and welded fabrication.
By the time the mid-50s came in, when this ship was built, the ship owner was still somewhat conservative and wanted the best of both worlds, i.e. riveted and welded. And this is shown to a classic example on Shield Hall. If you look at the ribs, they're all riveted. Above the waterline, typically, we have the welded joints. And then once you get onto the non-structural side, i.e. onto the superstructure, then that is all welded and not a rivet to be seen.
Assessment and understanding of a historic vessel will be immeasurably enhanced by a condition survey, the purpose of which is primarily to find out whether conservation is possible and to establish if and where specialist advice is required. At this stage, it may be that the conservation route for the vessel is clear. However, a survey can throw up unexpected findings that could alter your original assessment. Therefore, it is important to brief any surveyor to consider several different options for use against which the vessel can be assessed. The surveyor should look at the vessel's condition in relation to both fabric conservation and conservation of operational use. It's important to remember to take photographs of the vessel's interior and exterior and to produce measurement drawings. For larger ships, it may also be necessary to seek expert skills. Looking again at Cyclops as a case study, the conversion of this vessel to a mooring maintenance barge was not of a high standard. The original rowing gates were removed or boxed in with the fitting of higher gunnels bolted through the original ones. A small foredeck has been built in with a hand-operated winch for lifting moorings. The rowing thwarts have been removed except for one left in place forward. This thwart is not original and is significantly bowed due to the storage of derrick spars used in conjunction with the winch to raise and lower moorings and to load and unload heavier items. The thwart knees are of plywood which is rotting. However, the brackets to which the thwarts were fixed still exist, though many of them are not original. The starboard thwart riser is also non-original, as the housing for the thwarts have not been added. This type of assessment helps us understand the level of original material surviving, her current condition, and the priorities for stabilising her ahead of conservation work. It also informs the writing of a statement of significance to help decide the best conservation route to adopt.
When you've completed your research of the vessel and you've examined her fabric carefully, it's really important to record what you found in a written summary, or what we call a statement of significance. Statements of significance are a useful tool to summarise why a vessel is important, and they also help funders, vessel custodians, and members of the general public to understand why a vessel is, or maybe isn't, a priority for conservation. As the leading organisation for historic vessels in the UK, National Historic Ships has produced a template for writing statements of significance under 3 key headings. And you can see how this is set out in our guidance manual, Conserving Historic Vessels. Our accompanying leaflet sets out some of the key questions you need to think about under each of the 3 headings, as well as some of the pitfalls to be aware of. Consider carefully under which heading each piece of information belongs. Is it really relevant to the significance of the vessel, or would it be better kept on file with a longer account of her history? For example, it's interesting to know the names of the previous owners of the vessel, but unless these people have some particular relevance to shaping changes to that vessel, unless they're well known or famous, this may not be the right place to list that level of detail. Equally, it may be interesting to know about the ports that vessel visited during her working life, but unless they have a particular relevance to an area, region or event, they're probably not to be included in the statement itself. Only information which underlines why that vessel is really significant should have a place in this document. There can be confusion about what information goes in headings 1 and headings 3. The first section is where you should describe your findings from the fabric research of the vessel. This is where we want to learn about its originality, what material, fixtures or fittings still exist on that craft today, and if changes have been made, whether they've been done sympathetically, using like-for-like materials and traditional techniques. The last section is a bit different. It's more about the original shape of the vessel and its function. This is the place to tell us about any changes, conversions or adaptations later which may have affected the lines plan or the hull shape.
Establishing the historical significance of a vessel is about understanding its fabric and its story. It creates a well-structured assessment of how you move forward and in what direction. Start by asking yourself, what have you got and why does it matter? Look for indicators from the vessel itself that could tell you more about her history, such as the vessel's type and construction, its association with significant places, people and events, the age of the vessel, its percentage of original features, and its rarity. Conduct off-ship research using builders' records, oral sources, online resources, and related artifacts. Remember to be careful about logging your research and reference your sources. Take photographs of your vessel, measurement drawings, and references of off-ship research materials. Once you have this understanding in place, it can inform the conservation principles you will put into practice later in the course. Here are some key tasks for you to try. Undertake a condition survey of a historic vessel. Conduct some off-ship research into its history. Draft a statement of significance or written summary for the vessel.
She was built at Poole in 1943 and is now the last seagoing version of nearly 480 of these vessels that were built.
Robin is important because she's a survivor. Like many historic ships, she's now really the only representative of her class.
Our guidance manual, Conserving Historic Vessels, has more detail on creating a statement of significance. It's available from our website, www.nationalhistoricships.org.uk.